Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Then check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something to inspire you. That's dealtohealtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealtees.com. Again, that's dealtohealtees.com. All right, let's go. Welcome to the show. I am Ernest James.
And I am Ervin James.
And this is the Earn Erv Podcast, where we're talking family, faith, and fatherhood, plus a little bit of foolishness.
And man, we are on a mission right now to bring all the conversations that'll bring change into our communities, because we definitely believe that a strong family is always the foundation to a strong community.
All right. Make sure that you guys are following us on all of our social media pages, also on all of your podcast listening platforms. Make sure that you guys are checking us out. Definitely, we want to make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. At this time, we are sharing a channel, a YouTube channel with our partner podcast, which is the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. So make sure that you guys are following us there. Ervin, how you doing today, man? What's going on?
Oh man, it's been a beautiful day. It's been a nice day, even though it's kind of cold as the wintertime, but it's been pretty good for me. About yourself?
I am good. Just want to usually you're not supposed to date your podcast, so we kind of refrain from saying dates because you never know when someone is listening. But we just getting started, so we definitely can mention our date because we want to be able to track how far we've came. So right now we're just kind of coming into the new year of 2024.
Yep.
So it's definitely starting off as I want to say personally it's starting off as a good year. For me, got some things going on. I know last year for us and our community and the families and friends in our circles, we had some losses. Definitely at the end of 2024, we definitely send our condolences to our family and friends who also, who experienced those losses last year. But coming into this year, it's going pretty good. I'm walking out and stepping out into my pushing my speaking career a little further this year. Definitely made some investments.
Yep.
Investing in that business last year, and I'm looking forward to come. So what about yourself?
Like I said, been trying to make changes coming into this year. Just got to be intentional now, trying to move forward. Definitely put some more investments in. You got to believe in yourself. If you're going to believe in the community that surrounds you, you got to start with yourself as well. So that's my goal this year, start with myself. That way I can help build those that surround me and they can help build me up.
All right. Well, that's all good. So that's kind of why we're here again. This is the second episode of the Earn Erv Podcast. We definitely want to thank all our listeners who are tuning in, and you get to watch us from the beginning, right? Get to see how this thing started. So 5, 10, 20 years from now, we look back and we on episode, 500 or something. You guys get to say you was here when we first started. And so
Exactly.
in our first episode, we talked a little bit about our family, our upbringing, sort of our background, and kind of why we started the podcast. But in this episode, Ervin, we want to talk about and give the listeners just uh, a hearing of our hearts of why we wanted to start this podcast. First of all, and then going into what we believe will be the thing behind the podcast. That's the motivating factors behind the podcast, why we even started it. And so our mission, as our official mission, is to have the conversations that will change our community, right? And so we want to
Yeah.
have the conversations that we're not necessarily having no more, right? Or at least I feel like we're not having more, or maybe even
Right.
not even having enough of, right? So in your own wording, you know what I'm saying? Like what is it, especially about conversations that when we start having it, start to change stuff.
So for me, it's like the first question you got to start asking is, what will change a community? What are the factors and the things that can happen that will affect it in a negative or a positive way? So once you start to understand that, then you can open up the conversations about what are the things that are necessary and that are needed to move forward so that the community can grow. So for me, it's starting off. I believe that protecting the community is one of the biggest factors that you start with, because you got to understand what are you protecting, and if you're not going to protect it, what will be the factors that are going to change it, that'll bring it down or that'll hinder it from growing.
Yeah, and I think one of our uh, one of our topics, should I say, that we're definitely going to talk about, which is our foundation, which is family, faith, and fatherhood, would be that fatherhood part of it, right? So we were both
Right.
raised, of course, we're brothers, so we were both raised by our father, and while we were able to be raised by our father, we definitely see how or where the fathers were missing, not only in our extended family, but in our friends, and the community around us, definitely. And so I think that one of the major things when we get, really dive into these things on a week to week basis, we're going to talk a lot about fatherhood and manhood and leadership,
Yeah.
because those are like the main pillars of the community. I heard someone say, I was watching another podcast just recently, and I heard someone say that the system is set up, if you look at it, the system is set up to benefit every time a man is not in his rightful place, right? So
Exactly.
when we think about welfare or government assistance, it's like, hey, I'll give you this money to help you pay rent, but you can't have a man in the house. I'll give you
Right.
this money to support your family, but you can't have a man in the house. You know what I mean? And so it incentivize, you know, the man not being in his rightful place. The fathers not being in the home, not being active in their kids' life, not raising their children. The system is set up to profit off of that, and so that's what was being said. And so I think that definitely as we get more into on a week to week basis, we definitely have to talk more about the fatherhood and the rightful places of men. So one of the things we want to talk about today is going into our belief, right? And what our belief is for the podcast is, our belief is that a strong family is the foundation of a strong community, and we're definitely trying to strengthen our community. And so one of the things we want to talk about is personal involvement, and because the personal involvement of our parents helps to build the strong family, and not just the parents, but also the involvement of all the members of the family, being involved in each other, being involved in uh, raising each other, growing together as a family unit, then that affects us with our community, right? It affects our community unit. So first of all, we just want to talk about parents, and we were just mentioning, well, I was just mentioning a minute ago about, the fathers being in their rightful place, but even not just the fathers, but the mothers also in their rightful place as a family, and rebuilding the family structure that will cause our families to be stronger, but then it also will strengthen our communities.
Yeah. So parents are the gatekeepers of your personal development. Your parents are the ones who guides the children in the way that structures their upbringing. And like you said before, if there is no father there, then that foundation of protection is not there. And if there's no mother there, there's no humbling or no emotional protection that is there. And so your personal involvement will be affected either way, whether you're not being protected physically or feeling safe, or you're not feeling protected emotionally, your heart. So emotions is one of the biggest factors that we learn how to interact with each other. And our parents are the first ones to teach us. One of the biggest things for men that we've learned, men don't like to really show too much emotion. And it would think it's stemmed from time to time. And as we come into these new generations, things kind of change and evolve because men begin to understand that just because you show emotion doesn't mean you're weak. You know, you have to show some kind of emotion to teach how to love and how to accept vulnerabilities. And as being a man, sometimes we don't like to show vulnerability. We have this this muscular, you know what I'm saying? Always, always strong, always. And sometimes you have to show your sons that sometimes you need to show emotion because emotion is a release. That's what it is. Crying is a release. Sometimes you got to let the tears flow. It doesn't make you weak. It just makes you human. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think as this being just the beginning, but even as we go on, one of the things that I want to do, even with this podcast, is to be able to create the safe spaces for family as a general, but definitely for men. To be able to hear our vulnerableness, talking about the things that's important to us, talking about our families and things, and even some of the experiences that we have. But definitely wanted to be a safe space where they can feel safe to come in and say how they feel, and listening to us being open then allows them to be open. So a lot of the things that
Exactly.
I'm learning, that we were made to be alone, right? We weren't made. God created us, and when He created us, He said it's not good for man to be alone. And so I'm learning that everything that I need personally is in someone else, right? Like the love that I need is in someone else's heart. You know what I'm saying? The consideration that I need is in someone else's mind to think about me. All those things that I need is in someone else, and the things that they need is in me. So it's important for me to share myself, my feelings, my vulnerabilities with someone else because it releases them to do the same, right? So now I become the person that I'm giving the same thing I'm wishing to receive. And so we definitely want this to be a platform where men and families in general, everyone can feel open enough to share, but yeah, like you were saying with the men and not sharing our emotions, a lot of that come from passed down from generation to generation.
Yep.
But we are coming into a space now where men are learning that what, it's important for us to be in touch with our emotional side. That it does not make us weak, because again, it makes us human. Because even in the Bible, one of the most famous scriptures in the Bible is Jesus wept. And why did he weep? Because he was feeling emotion. He was dealing with his emotions and expressing those emotions at the same time. And I think that's now, even as I'm saying it, that's such a statement, because That's a full sentence in the Bible. That's a full
Yep.
scripture. Just those two words. Jesus wept.
It's the
It's a
shortest verse in the Bible.
period. Yeah, it's a period, but it probably should be an exclamation point, right? Because it's like, no, when you think about it, Jesus wept. The Son of God wept, because he was a man, and in man form, he felt the emotions and the feelings of a man, and he was open to share his emotions and show his emotions in front of others. And so we have to take that same example, because Jesus is the example that we aim to follow. And with our emotions feel the same way, as like, hey, we can show our emotions. We can weep openly and be okay. It doesn't affect your manhood. It doesn't make you less than a man to be openly show your emotions, because as a human, we all have it.
Yeah, and if you really look at that, Jesus wept. After he wept, it didn't stop him from doing the process that he needed to do. He still did the work. So it's okay to cry a little, but don't let that stop you from moving forward. Release a little emotion, let the burdens come off you, and then go forward, move forward. So it's a lot of lessons that we can learn from that small scripture in itself. You know, spiritually and naturally. So um, it teaches you how to be in tune with God. It teaches you how to be vulnerable and being able to accept certain things and just let them release. Even nature teaches us, when you give something, you get something back. If you plant a seed, if you just throw the seed in the dirt and you never do nothing to it, it might grow, but it's going to need something to be implanted into it. So if you just wait for the sun to come out, or you wait for the rain to come, then it's going to take longer for the process. But if you actually start watering it yourself and giving it a little bit of love and tender care, and then it starts to grow sooner. So that to me is like it's like a building block, to building your family.
Yeah. So speaking of building blocks, one of the next things, the other things that's in connection with, our belief is financial literacy, because definitely financial literacy is one of the main building blocks to building generational wealth, for the family foundation, right? For the foundation of the family. And I think we are so behind in a lot of cases with
Oh
the
yeah.
financial literacy of just maintaining on a day-to-day basis. We're not even going to talk about generationally, right?
Right.
We're just talking about like on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
of man and woman individually, but then as a family, because the individuals don't necessarily have the financial literacy that they need when it comes to the family definitely don't have the financial literacy to really maintain, in some cases, just the family unit, let alone, again, talking about generational wealth. So I think that it's important for us to even get to that, because I think there's some things that even mama and daddy didn't know that part of we know now, because we're more pushing into the area. But there were some things that they didn't know, that I think if they knew, would have set us a lot further, than we were when we got started.
Exactly. So as we went and get older and older, you start to understand how important it is for one simple thing: budget. Budget is like the core thing to everything that you have financially. You can have all the money in the world, you can have all the credit in the world, but if you don't have a place for that money to go that's going to benefit or strengthen the family, you're going to end up wasting it. And a lot of us never really learn how to budget. You have so much income coming in, and as this flesh is like, oh, I want a new car, or oh, I want that new outfit, or oh, I liked it, such and such a new decor for the bedroom or for the living room. And you got income coming, so you just go out and spend. So before you know it, now you look back into the pot, and your money has been depleted so fast, and you don't even have a record of where it went. Restaurants. You know what I'm saying? You went to
Yeah.
the restaurant so many times, and before you know it, you just spent a good $1,000 in a week and don't even realize it. So thus and such. So you lost track of where your money was going. So budgeting is to me is the biggest factor of understanding financial literacy outside of just having income.
Yeah, yeah. And then after budgeting, definitely will be credit because I was just thinking it, even as we were saying, I remember when I bought my first car, and I think you bought your first one at the same time, the ones that we had Cardinals on, not the ones we
Right, right.
but I remember mama taking us
The
to get
beginning of
our
our
first
debt.
cars at the same time. Right, right. But mama taking us to get our cars at the same time. Um, for our first actual cars, like I said, that we had a car note on, and part of that she had to put her name on our cars. She had to co-sign for us, right?
Exactly.
But I'm just thinking about even back then that Mama always had great credit. So
A1.
even if had she known, I don't know if she knew or not, but even had she known about putting us as a authorized user on her credit cards, and not necessarily giving us the credit card itself, but putting us on as an authorized user would give us her credit history,
Right.
And so since she already had good credit, had she known that, like I said, I don't think she knew that, but that could have started us off where we could have been able to get our cars, definitely get our first own credit cards to be able to start managing our own credit. But also, by the time we got to the point where we were ready to buy our first vehicles, where we had a note, we could just put our own names on it because we would have had the credit to go with it. But I
Exactly.
don't think Mama even knew that at that time because it was even something that I learned later on. But it definitely
Hmm.
was something that I put into use with my own daughter when she got old enough. Actually, before she even got old enough, I think she wasn't even old enough to get a credit card yet. But I had already put her on my credit card so that as authorized users, so that she would already have the credit once she get old enough, where she's old enough to use it. She already have some years of credit that had been built, just by her being on my credit card. And another thing is, to the parents, if you have good credit, or even if you don't have good credit, but you want your child to start off with good credit, you could get, if you're responsible. Let me say that
You gotta throw that in there.
if you're responsible, you can get a credit card, in your child's name, while they're too young to use it, but you can get a card in their name and begin to build their credit. So by the time that they get old enough, whether you have them as an authorized user on your card, plus their own card that's in their name that you've helped to build up by the time that they're old enough and wise enough to use their own credit, then they're in a position to start off, at a good starting point and pretty much get anything that they want to do, especially if they um, once they hit like 21 and now the
Exactly.
full opportunities of adulthood is open to you, to be able to buy your first house or first building, as we definitely will get into later when we talk about finances. Instead of don't buy a house first, buy a building because it's the same
Right.
loan. But that's that's a whole nother that's a whole nother thing. But just to be able to be in position for them to buy a house and to buy a car, whatever it is, using just their credit without having to have this huge down payment or whatever, because they have bad credit or no credit, that even within itself, when we're talking about financial literacy, is a good starting point, for the family and for the members of the family.
Yeah. So, and if you really think about it, it goes back into the building of the family. You get into this programming, and that's what unfortunately for our parents and their parents and so on and so forth, you get into this programming of a belief, you know, the picket fence and the brand new house, and you don't really get down to the nitty gritty of how to structure what you need in order to get those things. Set yourself up, financially, set yourself up to be able to build your family up. So even with the credit, like you were saying with mom, in the beginning, I don't think she knew how good her credit was, but she didn't understand or she didn't have the information that we've learned now about adding people on and building up their credit first. You know what I'm saying? Just by what you're doing. One of the things that she did do that I like that I've been doing ever since when we got into high school, she helped us open up our first bank account, and that right there started the possibility of savings. Understanding how to put money aside, and not always be ready to spend. Be able to save money for anything that's going to happen down the line, or important things, or whatever the case may be, that you will have an outlet to be able to make those expenses happen. So I was grateful for that. So that's something that I've always did with all of my children. Once they hit a freshman high school, I go open them a bank account, give them that. I mean, it's not a credit card, but it's a card.
Right.
Get them used to that process so they can understand how it works. And for us, we've learned a lot with credit, so we're able to teach our children a lot more than what our parents were able to teach us, when we were younger.
Yeah, that bank account thing is a good one because I actually took my daughter to open up one. She had an account before in another state, but when she came here
Mm.
where I am, I opened up her another account, and I have access to the account where I can check the balances and things. And I looked in her account the other day, and it was at zero. And I'm like, you can't have an account at zero. You know what I
Exactly.
I mean, like, first of all, if you have an account at zero, you don't need an account. So they're gonna close it if it stays at zero. That's number one. But number two, you should never have an account at zero because that means you spent every penny that you have.
Exactly.
You know
All the
what I'm
way
saying? I'm
down to
like,
the
you should
one
never
cent.
spend. Yeah, no, it wasn't even 1 cent in there. It was like zeros all the way across, right? So I'm
Oh
like,
my
you
goodness.
can't have all zeros. So I sent a couple dollars, like $10. I put in their account. I said, this account should never go under $10, right? And like, I don't care how much you have in it, it should never go under $10. Number one, because I'm putting this $10 in there for that reason. But number two, you got to realize and you got to get in the habit of putting money away and not spending it. Definitely not spending every penny that you earn,
Exactly.
but even as you start spending, be uh, intentional about how much that you're going to leave in that account. Even if you decide to open up a savings account, okay, fine. How much is you going to put into the savings account? But what you can't do is continually keep on spending, 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 and then I look in here and you at zero. Like that's not gonna work.
Yeah, and like I said, we've come a long way of understanding how finances work. We've come a long way of understanding budgeting, understanding putting money to the side, and also understanding how credit works. But like you said, you don't never want to get to the point where you don't even have 1 cent. We used to
Yeah.
keep change and have these little jars at the side of the bed. Every time you come home, you throw the pennies in there and so on and so forth. But if you every time you come home, you taking out change because you want to go to the candy store or wherever the case may be. Before you know it, you're gonna get to the bottom of the barrel and you ain't gonna have nothing. So
Right.
what are you gonna do if an emergency come up? You don't even got 1 cent. You don't even have a penny to your name. They used to have they saying, I don't got a penny to my name. No, you literally don't even have a penny to your
Right.
name. you know, and but see, one of the other things also, like for us in teaching our children have become so accustomed to us giving, you
Mhm.
know, and that becomes a bad habit. Like you said, that became her spending habit. I know eventually daddy's gonna give me some money, so I'm gonna spend all I have, because he's gonna replenish. No, I'm not supposed to be replenishing you. Always, you're supposed to be figuring out how to save your money and having money available for things that you want. One of the things that makes me laugh when I give my children money and we go somewhere and I'm like, they say, hey, I want to get this and that. I say, well, you got money. They tell me, well, daddy, I'm trying to save. Oh, I'm not trying to save. It's like, oh wow, oh now you're trying to save, but I don't deserve to save. That's how it works. Okay.
Right. Say you're trying to save your money, but you want me to spend my money on what you want. Like, no, that's not how it
Exactly.
works. You save so you can buy what you want, not save so you can buy spend more of my money. Oh man, just some of the joys of fatherhood, right?
Man, tell me about it.
But Leslie, one of the last things I want to talk about, as we talk about our families, is how our families influence the rest of the community. Because I think one of the things that we've kind of gotten away from is that family structure, not just as an individual family, but as a community family, like a family as a community, because our individual family influences our family unit can influence the building of the character of our community, right? And so if you think about, back in the days, probably definitely before our time, but if you think about back in the days, even when the stories of, mama and dad growing up, and hearing them talk about how they grew up and how the community was structured, of being able to go out or send your child out of the house into the neighborhood, and knowing that not only do they know, but the neighbors know to look out for them, and they can correct them if they see them doing something wrong. And because
Exactly.
there was a value that the community had as a whole. Like, these are the community values. We're going to look out for each other. We're going to protect each other. We're going to correct each other and our families, our children, and all of that. But I think that when the families start getting away from the community standards, and each family started creating their own standards, now you don't want me to correct your child, or I can't expect you to correct my child, because we don't even have the same standards.
Right.
And just said personally for me, like, I don't smoke and drink, so I don't expect my child to, while they're a child. But
Right.
the person next door may smoke and drink with his kids.
Right.
So now I can't expect you to, you know, have that same family community standard that I have, because now, instead of having a community standard that we all agree this is what we're going to do as a community, it's each family for themselves, almost each man for themselves. And which is, I think, is one of the reasons why we're so in disarray, with our families right now.
Yeah, and even so, back then, even though the different families had different understandings or different values in a sense, but when it came to the community, they all had the same understanding. You know, you had some parents that might, like you said, smoke and drink with their children, but I know that this child is now at my house with my child and their parent doesn't. So I'm going to make sure that while this child is here, we're not going to do these things. Even though these are things that we are comfortable doing, but it's the community that's important. You don't never want to overstep the boundaries of each other's beliefs. And that's how it used to be back in the days. And that's one of the things that people have fell short with. It's like, oh, this is my space and I can do whatever I want in my space. And we learn, well, we develop how to not respect each other anymore. And that's one of the biggest things that helps a community, when everybody respects everybody. I respect your belief, you respect my belief. And if you're around me, then things that you don't like, I don't do. And when I'm around you, things that you don't like, I don't do, because we respect each other. It doesn't take away from us or what we believe. It's just a matter of coming together with the same mindset that we're trying to build something together. So we have respect one to another.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be really a key thing with us, um, getting back, getting our communities back to where we want it to be, is to get to the point where we're setting up the values that we're going to be able to um, uphold as a community. Like, okay,
Yeah.
as a community, what are going to be our values? And like you
Right.
said, even though we may have some differences, our core values of what we want as a community pretty much should be the same, because I
Yeah.
think we all want the same thing. Everybody wants to be happy.
Right.
Everybody wants their family to be safe. Everybody wants to be
Exactly.
prosperous. So I think those standards or those desires are consistent across the board, but
Exactly.
we have to set up a standard of living that's consistent around across the board too, that
Exactly.
benefits the entire community and the family as well. So Ervin, before we get out of here, I want you to give us some words of the week before we get out of here. But to the listeners, man, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you guys again for listening to only the second episode. So we still getting it together. We still working out the kinks and all of that. But only the second episode of the Earn and Erv podcast. But also, I wanted you guys to check out our product of the week, because as you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast. And one of the ways that we stay on the air is by bringing you products that you may purchase in order to help us to meet our financial goals. So our product of the week for this week is Forgiving Me, the Forgiving Me ebook. Which is Forgiving Me, the 4 steps to self-forgiveness. And so it talks about forgiveness, what it is, what it's not, forgiveness of self, because we know that sometimes we make some decisions in our lives that we are not necessarily happy about. And after we get the results of those decisions, we hold grudges against ourselves. Like, man, I knew better than that. I should have done better than that. I should have known better than that. So this ebook was Forgiving Me, the 4 steps to self-forgiveness, will help us to start to analyze and go through the motions and deal with the things that we need to deal with in order to start forgiving ourselves for the decisions that we made. And those ebooks can be found, that ebook as well as others can be found at ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. And also you guys can check out our inspirational teas at Deal to Heal Teas. That's Deal, the number 2, healteas.com, Deal to Heal Teas.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. So you guys make sure you go and check that out. So Ervin, I want you to have the last word, man. Give us our words of the week before we get out of here. So the floor is yours.
One of the words of the week is to stand strong. Stand strong in your belief, and stand strong in your core values, and stand strong together with those that can help you build. Only bow your heads to pray and weep, and then face the challenges face on. So stand strong and come together as one.
All right. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you so good. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Earn Erv Podcast. We will see you next week. Until then, be blessed.
Be blessed, family.
Hi, guys. If you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James. And on my podcast, my guests and I discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. So check out our podcast. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or even on Audible. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel at Deal to Heal with E. James Podcast. Until then, see you soon.